The NBA Finals are here, which means it's time to hate ethically. What does that mean and how do we do it? Don't worry, I got you. Play the theme music. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers. Special thank you to my sponsor, Turn the Page Travel. Head to turnthepagetravel.com, page spelled like Becker's, or check out the link in the show notes to let them help you write your next adventure. Whether you're just going on vacation, planning a golf trip, or heading to a sporting event, they've got you covered with all kinds of cool, affordable packages. The NBA Finals is a sporting event, one of my favorites. In fact, Game 1 was an absolute thriller as the Pacers came back from a 15-point fourth quarter deficit to win it on yet another Tyrese Halliburton game winner with 0.3 seconds left. But maybe that doesn't excite you. Maybe you're one of the millions whose brain has been poisoned by rage bait sports talk, and it's killing you that neither team is from a major media market, or you're concerned about the ratings, or just generally having a hard time enjoying these finals because you don't have anything to hate. Well, I've got you covered. Hating is a part of enjoying sports, but you've got to hate the right way. Whether you want to hate the Thunder, the Pacers, or both, this handy guide will make that easy and also put you on the path to appreciating the NBA properly. This is the nicotine gum of your hate recovery journey. So without further ado, let's start with the number 1 seed out of the Western Conference and the favorite to win it all, at least before Game 1, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Honestly, being the favorite should be reason enough to hate them. They've been overwhelmingly good all season long and felt so destined to be here that we all freaked out when the Nuggets took them to 7 games. They lost a single game combined in their other 2 playoff series. Adding a ring to their 68 regular season wins vaults them into the conversation for one of the best teams ever, as only 3 NBA champions have won more games than they have this season. But they don't feel like one of the best ever, do they? I mean, we're talking about the Michael Jordan Bulls and the Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West Lakers here. Or even if we zoom out to 67 and 68 win NBA champions, that's still the Wilt Sixers, Larry Bird Celtics, Shaq and Kobe Lakers, and Steph Curry Warriors. As great as this team is, they don't feel like that. So, to protect the history of the game, we need them to lose to keep them out of that conversation the same way we needed the 73-win Warriors team to lose to protect the legacy of those 96 Bulls. When we look at why they don't feel like those historic teams, that gives us another great reason to hate. It all starts at the top, and the top here is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, on paper, he's already a historically talented player by virtue of taking home this year's MVP trophy. This was his 3rd straight season, averaging more than 30 points per game. He can hoop. The issue is more of how he hoops. As opposing crowds have frequently and loudly let us know, Shai is a free throw merchant, a flopper. The slightest bit of contact sends him flailing to the ground like he's auditioning to die in a shootout in a Tubi movie. This is unpleasant to watch. We want to see action, not acting. We want to see actual skills on display, not deception. How many people turn on a baseball game to see a catcher frame pitches? Now, he's far from the only player who does this, but it is a solid foundation to build our SGA hate on, and he's got some other quirks that go on top of that. Specifically, he is just too cool. All right, do y'all remember when the Kanye smile was a meme and they asked Kanye about it, and he explained that he doesn't smile because he saw some book from the 1800s and nobody was smiling in it, and he thought it looked cool and stylish, so he decided to try to stop smiling himself in the name of fashion? That's essentially Shai's personality on the court. We love players, especially star players, to show us they care. Shai doesn't give us this satisfaction. He glides around the court like it's a runway, almost entirely expressionless until it's time to sell a call. He said that he believes showing emotion gives the opponents an edge, and I do think there's something to this, but he's simply too cool, and for this, we must hate him. As hateable as Shai is, he might not even be the most hateable player on this team. Chet Holmgren starred alongside Shai in that catchy in the absolute worst way What a Pro Wants AT&T commercial, and the more I get to know him, the more I hate him. Let's start with the obvious. His name is Chet, and he looks like someone took Nick Sabatka and gave him a pituitary gland issue. However, that's funny, but not a true reason to hate the man. The real reason to hate him is because his personality seems to have been cobbled together from Call of Duty lobbies and World Star videos. This has gone semi-viral again in this postseason, but a couple years ago, Kevin Durant was hitting 54% from three through the first part of the season. Chet, who went to a private Christian school in Minnesota, tweeted that, quote, 54 from tray ball is OD shooting hang pulls. What the fuck is that? Who talks like that in real life? And of course, there's the infamous picture of him wearing a do-rag on a plane. What is it with white guys named Chet becoming culture vultures? Is anybody studying this phenomenon? Then a video of his GQ interview just dropped where he talks about his favorite books. They're all coffee table books. He explains the reason for this is because he dropped out of college, so too many words hurt his brain and he likes the pictures. In a world where Colin Cowherd said that John Wall was a bad leader who would never win anything because his dad died when he was a kid and he did the Dougie during pregame introductions, Chet cannot get to just walk around here talking and acting like this without any hate. If I have to do it all myself, I will. But I do hope you'll join me, just like I hope you will join me in hating Jalen Williams, who himself joined Chet and SGA in the follow-up AT&T commercial. While it was certainly less annoying, Jalen has not been. His play during the Nuggets series that they nearly lost was mostly abysmal. That in and of itself is not a crime, I checked, but the way he handled himself at the post-game press conferences after those bad games is, at least in the eyes of fans like myself. Instead of demonstrating in any way, shape, or form that he cared, he instead appeared to use these press conferences as opportunities to become a meme. In one instance, he repeated Taurean Prince's widely memed how to rebound press conference moment nearly word for word. So not only was he not taking this seriously, but he wasn't even being original in his quest to become a meme. And then he was fined at another press conference for wearing a shirt that said, "Fuck art, let's dance." Is he some awful person? No. But if I can throw this stone from my own glass house, he clearly thinks that he's funnier than he really is. And this is very much the type of behavior people point to when they talk about how kids these days are too online. Looking at the rest of the roster, Lou Dort is hateable because he's a hack artist on defense who flops on offense. These are generally hateable offenses on their own, but combined, it's egregious. Dort and Alex Caruso both get a lot of leeway from referees when it comes to being handsy on defense, but I don't mind that much because I do like tough perimeter defense. It also helps Caruso's case that he reminds me of Elmer Fudd in Space Jam, but to rough people up and flop the way that Dort does is shameless. The cherry on top for all this Thunder hate is that they were ripped away from the city of Seattle, a basketball crazed city. Now, there are plenty of fans who follow the team to OKC, and they deserve to see a title, like my guy Danny Foxworth. And I certainly had no issue pulling for the Aces to win the WNBA title, even though they didn't start their franchise there. But hating is about hypocrisy. So, set aside all that and appoint yourself the defender of the legacy of one of the coolest franchises from the 90s and pull against this team. The Pacers were not necessarily a cool 90s team. I remember that playoff run they had where they had Rick Smits and Chris Mullin out there with shaved heads, but they were a prominent one thanks in large part to the very easy to hate Reggie Miller. When I think of ethical hating is like a form of a compliment almost. This is who comes to mind, someone who you can't stand because he's annoying, like a younger sibling or cousin, and he's good. A huge reason this current Pacers team is here is thanks to Tyrese Halliburton, who is very much like Reggie in this way. Tyrese is like Reggie if he were played by the guy who plays Jordan Baker on the CW show All-American. Just a lanky, light-skinned dude you want to stuff in a locker who is always running his mouth while also coming up huge in clutch moments. They are also similar in that their performance in those clutch moments also makes it hard to accurately evaluate how good they are as players. In 18 seasons, Reggie made just 5 All-Star teams. He averaged more than 20 points just 6 times. He was an average-ish defender at best. When you look at his regular season stats, it's kind of hard to believe how big of a role he played in 90s basketball. Similar story with Tyrese, whose numbers are a little bit flashier, but we'll go through some absolutely awful slumps where he looks like he has no interest in being on the court and would be fine if you took him out the game. His defense is even worse than Reggie's, despite us seeing that he can be a capable defender when he wants to lock in. But then you see them in their best moments, like Reggie versus the Knicks, or Hallie in the in-season tournament, or last round versus the Knicks, or game 1 versus the Thunder at the end. And you're like, is this one of the best players in the league? The answer is no. Tyrese certainly has a flair for the dramatic that I can appreciate, but this team would be even better if his peaks weren't quite as high, but he was a little bit more consistent. His big thing this playoffs has been trying to overcome the most overrated title bestowed on him by his fellow NBA players, courtesy of an anonymous poll. And sure, some of that could have been jealousy or the fact that he's annoying as hell, but he does seem to get judged on his best moments when few players get that benefit of the doubt, particularly when you consider Tyrese's age and the amount of accolades he has. He just seems to get more favorable coverage in general. In Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals, he became the first player to record 30-plus points, 15-plus assists, and 10-plus rebounds without a single turnover. Hell of a stat line, and he said post-game, when this was pointed out to him that he was the first to do it, that it felt like stats were being invented to make him look better. The media loved this. How humble of this man. Tyrese cares more about winning and impact than anything else. Beautiful, so sweet. Also, what a lie. This is one of the most stat-paddingest motherfuckers I've ever seen. Not all assists are created equal. If I'm holding the ball until I find the best opportunity to get an assist, is that best for my team's chances of winning? Sure, it looks good on the stat sheet when it works, but what about when it doesn't? I'm not saying this was the case in that particular game, but there have been many games where that was the case for Tyrese. And while stat padding is prevalent throughout the game, similar to flopping like SGA does, it's incumbent upon us to point it out and shame those who do it. While I'm shaming him, let's go back to my Reggie comp with Tyrese. One huge area where they differ is when you start to examine their trash talking habits. Reggie talked all the time, still does. Doesn't matter who he was playing, what was happening, Reggie was talking. Tyrese only does all that talking when he's winning. This is cowardly and despicable. Talk your shit all the time if you're bad, like you want to act like you are. And of course, this would appear to be a hereditary issue, as we saw with his dad during the Bucks series earlier in the playoffs. This man ran out on the court to get in Giannis's face as soon as the buzzer sounded and the series was over. He could have talked to him at any point during that series. He could have talked to any player, not just the guy who is the subject of a Disney movie. Go run up on Dame, who is always beefing with your son, or Bobby Portis if you're really feeling brave. Do it game 1 or game 3 or even before game 5. After the series is over, get out of here, old man. Now, at first glance, it is much harder to hate on the rest of the Pacers, particularly compared to the Thunder. I mean, they're the underdog, first of all, and they don't have a ton of huge personalities outside of Halliburton. Pascal Siakam has been their best player all year long. I did not think this was compatible with a deep playoff run, but here we are. He's a relatively inoffensive player on the surface, especially if you're like me and remember that viral tweet that said to think about E40 saying Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam. I almost exclusively hear that in my head when I read his name or see his face, and it's very hard to hate on him when I'm thinking of that. However, much like Pablo Torre, I am a journalist, and I used my journalistic instincts to help you on your hate journey, and I did some digging and found that Siakam once partnered with McDonald's when he was a Toronto Raptor to create the Siakam Swirl McFlurry in honor of his patented spin move. This was a vanilla McFlurry with hot fudge and red Smarties. It's very hard to upset me with dessert, but they did it here. This is lazy, and it also makes no sense. Y'all picked the next to last candy to be eaten out of a Halloween bag, barely edging out candy corn, and just threw it in what is mostly a regular McFlurry. The only worst McFlurry I can think of is the last one I had, which had flies in it instead of the M&Ms I asked for. When I returned it, they gave me a coupon for a free McFlurry. Looking back on it, they were probably taunting me. I was in high school and I didn't know how to negotiate or the proper channels to take my complaint. Needless to say, I'll never be sponsored by McDonald's, which is fine because I am sponsored by Turn the Page Travel. What better way to get a bad taste out of your mouth than to go to the MLB All-Star Game in Atlanta and experience it to its fullest? I'm talking about the Home Run Derby, the All-Star Game itself with premium seating options, and select packages even get you a meet and greet with Braves legend Chipper Jones. After that, head on over to the Braves Market where they have Mayfield ice cream products like the appropriately named Big Chipper, guaranteed to be fly-free and delicious. TurnThePageTravel.com, page spelled like Becker's. The second most hateable Pacer is actually Benedict Mathurin. During the Cavs series, he punched DeAndre Hunter in the chest and immediately backed away from Hunter before stopping to stand arms outstretched crucifixion style as Hunter angrily stormed towards him and shoved him to the ground. Earlier this season, also against the Cavs for whatever reason, he was ejected after bumping referee Natalie Sago. As much as I hate refs, you can't bump them, especially the ones who are women. Even stranger, the replay showed it was a blatant foul. I'm not even sure what he was arguing. So Mathurin's a real hothead and a ding-dong, which is a tough combination. His game reminds me a lot of Corey Maggetti's as well, which is neither here nor there, but gives me a chance to remind everybody that Maggetti's nickname was bad porn because you saw a lot of penetration in scoring, but you weren't really happy about it. Sure, they might have some superficial stuff that gets under your skin, like how TJ McConnell looks like that guy you play pickup with who tries to draw charges, and Ben Shepherd's mustache, which should also be nicknamed bad porn. But in general, this isn't a very hateable team, and for that, we should hate them because they're getting in the way of one of the things that makes sports fun. They're showing up to face off with one of the most annoying teams in NBA history that fits every bad Gen Z stereotype into one roster, a franchise that was ripped away from a city that loves basketball, and this is who they're showing up with to take them on. They've got the Stefan Urkel version of Reggie Miller and his suburban T. Morant daddy. That's just not going to cut it. This team cannot win because you don't want to explain to your grandkids why it was called the Obi Toppin game any more than you wanted to explain Austin Crozier's breakout postseason during the Pacers' 2000 run. If that doesn't get your hate fired up, I don't know what will. So, happy hating. This has been another episode of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. Appreciate you watching, listening, rating, subscribing, reviewing, and sharing. Thank you again to Turn the Page Travel for sponsoring the show, page spelled like Becker's. Check out the link in the show notes, and I will catch you later.